Welcome to Change Your World, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kyle Hurd, along with Tom Hurd, my father, and Connor Hurd, my brother. We're just coming to you to do a little. It's not really like our usual podcasts are, I guess. This is kind of more of a rumination and a thought process for me, anyway. But before we get started, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Pretty good.
Had a good productive day, and now we get to do a little podcasting. It's a nice end to the day. It works.
I agree.
Yeah. So
what we were going to talk about was just the theory of the ends justifying the means.
Okay.
We had talked a little bit before we started recording about some examples of this that are good and some that are bad. Obviously, well, I mean, I guess it depends on what point of view you're looking at it from, but certainly from our point of view, the atomic bombs that were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, obviously, they wrought terrible destruction, and it's never a good thing to deploy nuclear weapons. Which actually, fun fact, a lot of the
While we're on the topic,
a lot of the higher ups,
nuclear weapons and fun fact. I don't know how all that goes together.
Well, a lot of the scientists didn't know what, as far as radiation and nuclear fallout and stuff would come. They just thought it was a gigantic bomb that they could make.
Yeah.
I mean, and they had been bombing Berlin and everything else and all the other islands and stuff with, conventional bombs. So it was just it was thought at the time that it was just going to be a gigantic bomb. But it was, and wound up being more than that. But
Right.
To get back on track.
Well, can I jump in for 1 second?
Please do.
Let's just to intro this topic a little bit. Let's just take a real generic, simple example. Okay, so let's say somebody in your family injures themselves somehow at the house. Okay, they get hurt, and you decide not to call the ambulance, but you're going to rush them to the hospital. You're going to drive them to the hospital. All right. Now they're injured. Maybe it's life-threatening. Maybe it's not. But you feel like you have to get them to the hospital as fast as you can. So you're potentially, probably breaking some of the traffic laws to get there. You're probably speeding a little bit. You're probably maybe just slowing down for stop signs, looking both ways and going right through and not coming to a complete stop. But you have to get them to the hospital. Their life is saved.
Justifying the means.
The end justifies the means. You save somebody from either further injury because they're bleeding or whatever, and you probably have broken some speeding laws to get them there. So that's a simple example. We're talking about the end justifies the means. Now, you brought up the nuclear thing, and some people may think, well, that's on the total opposite end of that spectrum where the ends could never justify means. But that's what we'll give you our take, which may be a little surprising. But so somewhere, there's all kinds of degrees of this and variances of this. The Green New Deal being one. Should we bankrupt the United States to achieve some kind of help for the climate? Does the end justify that means? And there's plenty of others examples we could use, but that's kind of the idea of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Like we were talking about the atomic bombs. Obviously, they wrought a lot of destruction and a lot of people were killed. I think 174,000 people were killed during the actual bombing.
Now, is that you told the statistics? Is that just the Hiroshima bomb, or is that both bombs? Or
I believe it is a combination of both.
Okay.
Yeah, the statistics are 140,000 to 240,000.
Okay, so let's even go to the top end. Let's go to the 240, just to Now think about that a minute before we actually get into that. think about 200. I mean, it's a number, right? Numbers sometimes can really lose their meaning. But
Wasn't it Stalin that said, one person died is a tragedy and 50,000 people die as a statistic?
yeah, that's a good point, because if it's somebody you knew, one person can be a tremendous impact on you. If it, I'm pretty sure I didn't know any of those 240,000 Japanese citizens. However, that doesn't make it any less tragic. Um, 200, we lost 50,000 men roughly in Vietnam
Mm,
during the war. 50,000 is what, 1/5 of that number,
yeah.
in the whole 10 years, 11 years of Vietnam. This was on the process in a period of a couple of days.
Yeah.
240,000 civilians, women, children
Matter
were
of
killed.
seconds.
Right. So, okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead with your thought. I'm sorry.
Well, obviously that's a lot of people that died.
Hmm.
But the reason that they used the atomic bombs, obviously, one, like I said before, they weren't completely aware of the fallout, quote unquote, that would come from the atomic bombs. But another was they had actually done operation to, like they did for D-Day, where they were going to do, and they did for, all the other Okinawa
Invasions.
and Borneo and all those, do an amphibious landing onto the mainland
Right.
of Japan.
Right.
And the estimates that they came up with for casualties was, I think, from 500 to 750,000 American soldiers, and from 5 to 10 million Japanese citizens and soldiers. And the reason was because Japan wasn't going to surrender. That was their thing. Like,
Right.
you were going to have, I mean, they were training women and children to be in the army because they were
They
running out of men.
ran out of ammunition. Yeah.
Yeah.
That surrender was not part of their vocabulary at all.
No.
Yeah, I mean, on Okinawa, which was, one of the worst ones, Japanese, 94% of the Japanese soldiers died on that island. Like,
Mhm.
they were not going to, surrender or retreat. That was it.
Right. Right.
And it would have been probably even worse on the mainland,
Yeah. Oh, it definitely would have been worse on the mainland. That's it. That's the end of the line.
Yeah.
So Connor just got a call from his broker, E.F. Hutton. He had to take that call. Anyway, that's exactly right. They didn't give up even on the islands, let alone the actual mainland of Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been 10 times worse. So that's the thing, that I was kind of trying to paint the picture about how bad that means of achieving the end of the war was. A lot of people died. A lot of, you can even say a lot of innocent people died. And, I mean, you can have the philosophical arguments, what's a human life worth, and so on and so forth. But the only thing we can do as we look back is look at the numbers, like you just stated there.
Yeah.
People got to remember this was 1945, and it was, we were at war.
Mm-hmm.
When you're at war with a country, you're at war to win, and you want to end the war, conquer your enemy.
Yeah.
And when you're right, you're absolutely right. When they drew up for an amphibious landing onto Japan, I had heard upwards of 1 million American casualties were predicted. But even if you take your numbers, to 750,000.
I mean, it's 500,000 to 750,000 just for that one island. I mean, there had already been
just for that
500,000
landing.
in the
Just for that
Pacific
landing.
Theater.
That's exactly right. And I don't know what the numbers we lost in World War II are exactly. I think they're somewhere around 1 million, maybe not quite that high, or maybe it was 500,000.
I think it was 500,000.
I think
I think
probably
Russia
right.
lost the most, or maybe it was Germany. But
Yeah.
as Eddie Izzard said, they did start it. So
Yeah. But think about that. I mean, those numbers are staggering by today's standards. We lost like 3,500 or 4,000 men in Iraq in the campaigns in Iraq, and that's a lot of men. I'm not discounting that. I'm not making light of that at all. 30 is a lot of men, and it's horrible. But you can't even compare 3,500 to 50,000 in Vietnam or half a or so or two. The numbers are just staggeringly different. And then to have them figure that we're going to double our losses and then some in just that one theater of war, in that one landing there in Japan. The argument
just
certainly
to give some perspective to it, during the whole of World War II, the United States lost 419,400 deaths, not casualties.
Okay.
I mean, casualties was a crazy amount. But.
Sure. Okay, so 400,000 during the whole war, 41 to 45, and then that who knows how long it would have taken to conquer Japan if we had to go in on an amphibious landing like that.
Yeah.
You look at all the islands, Tarawa, Saipan, Guadalcanal, as they worked their way up towards Japan. Every one of those was absolute bloodbaths for mostly the 2nd Marine Division at that time. And
you had an uncle that was over there, right?
Yeah, but it was my dad's uncle, my great uncle, so he was great uncle. He was in the 2nd Marines, and he landed on Tarawa, Saipan, I think maybe Guadalcanal, but I'm not 100% sure. But I mean, he didn't talk much about it, but we worked. He and my dad worked together, and sometimes I worked with them. And on Saturday, we would work till about noon, and then we would go have lunch at this little pub. And I was underage, but he and my dad would have a few beers with lunch, and his tongue would loosen up a little bit, and he would tell us some things. And I mean, it was brutal. It was barbaric and brutal what those guys went through. And you can only imagine how much worse it would have been on the mainland of Japan. So his thing that he told me ever since I did, and I've taken this and I've argued it many times with people who talk about how evil and horrible the United States was for dropping those bombs. He said actually those atomic bombs saved lives, not only American lives, but Japanese lives. And the numbers bear it out, just like we're just talking about.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, 175 to 240,000 Japanese deaths. What was the number of projected deaths had we landed of Japanese
5
citizens?
to 10 million citizens and soldiers,
10 million,
because everyone would have been fighting and no one would have surrendered. You would have had to basically kill everyone on the island.
We would have wiped out the Japanese.
Yeah,
I
mean, they lost 3.1 million anyway
during the war.
Yeah.
So they would have just then taken those numbers and tripled them. So then that puts them at 13 to 14 million. I don't know what their population was at that time, but 13 to 14 million. Okay, so it's a huge. That's those are numbers akin to the Civil War. We had a nation of
bigger than the Civil War.
Well, we had a nation of
percentages.
Yeah,
I got you.
We had a nation of about 6 million people, and we lost 600,000. 10% of our population was killed during that. So that would have even been a bigger percentage of the nation of Japan.
Mm.
And that's what you get a lot of times is oh well, we dropped the bombs, we killed 100 or 200,000 people, and how terrible it is. But the facts are the facts. We were at war. That hastened the end of the war. That brought them to their knees, and not only saved all the people maybe in the landing that would have died, but who knows how long that war would have gone after the landing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
they're projecting, the American deaths at hovering close to 1 million, the Japanese deaths around 5 to 10 million. There's no comparison.
No.
Comparison.
And in that case, I think we would both agree that the ends did justify the means.
Right. I think so.
And then you brought up the Civil War as well. We
Right.
10% of our population died, and it was horrific. Was the most Americans that have ever died in a war was during the Civil War, obviously,
Right.
because people on both sides were Americans.
Right.
But it was to keep the Union together and to get rid of slavery. So again, the ends justified the means.
Yeah. You would hope that wouldn't have had to happen, but it did.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about these, you can spew numbers out all day long, and really, it's hard to get a grasp of what they really mean. But I remember one night I watched Gettysburg. It was I think it was a documentary about Gettysburg, and Gettysburg happened. The Battle of Gettysburg happened over the 4th of July weekend, whatever year that was, 1864 or something. But in any event, in that weekend, there was over 50,000 deaths in one weekend, one battle. 50,000 deaths. And I remember watching that this many years ago, sitting on the couch, and it got to the end, and they kind of had the numbers scrolling down at the end of the documentary, and they came across that number. 50,000 men died in that couple of days. And the weight of that just hit me. And I mean, I started just sobbing, crying, thinking about the fact that 50,000 men stood on that battlefield doing what they thought was right, fighting each other, and lost their lives on. And so, even when you have situations where ends justify means, those means a lot of times come with a heavy price.
Yeah.
Which is what we're kind of, trying to reiterate here this evening.
Yeah. So when would the ends not justify the means? Like we talked about on one of the podcasts we recorded that is lost to the ether now.
It was a good one too.
It was pretty good one, I thought. But we talked about communism.
Right.
And I guess to a lesser extent socialism, but I mean, depending on your definition of it.
Right.
Where the ends, if everything worked out right and, there was no human intervention, I think Casey was saying if you all were robots,
Right.
The ends would be good, because everyone would have the same, and then, it would be a utopia or whatever.
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I don't know. And I guess you could say that they never got to the end to know
Right.
if the means were justified.
Right.
But, we talk about with the Green New Deal,
Yeah.
like obviously it would be a good thing to lower pollution and carbon emissions and all that. It would be good to be able to get our energy from renewable resources. Those
Right.
would all be good things, but
Sure.
the means to get to those things,
Right.
basically are taking out 70 to 80% of the U.S. economy,
At least, yeah. Yeah.
You know, in that case, would the ends justify the means?
Right. And in a case like that, of course, we've talked about that before too. You've got so many unintended consequences that they're either not thinking of, or they're not being honest enough to factor them into their equation. Um, when they raise the tax rate on the one percenters up to 70, 80, 90%, those one percenters aren't going to be here very long.
Hmm.
They're going to find some other place to go and shelter their money. They didn't get to be one percenters because they're stupid. Um, and then where does the money come from to pay for all that?
Well,
So,
even like, I mean, they've talked about it. Even if you were to tax the top 10%, I think 100%,
right.
you still wouldn't even come close to the $40 trillion or whatever
No,
we need to
it's 93 trillion over 10 years. Price tag.
93 trillion. Jeez.
93 is what they're estimating the price tag of the Green New Deal would be. Not to mention that there would be no automobiles, no airplanes.
Yeah, so while you're having to pay more money, you're losing money.
Yeah, and you're losing your quality of life for sure. So, I would be interested. I mean, there may be people listen that think that that's a perfectly good price to pay to save the earth. They AOC is talking about 12 years, and the environment will be so far gone that we'll never get it back, and the earth will end.
Mhm.
Which I don't believe for a minute that that's true. But there are people out there that believe that, and you know, uh, they're hell bent on this idea, no matter what it costs. Like Kamala Harris said recently. Somebody asked her about the cost of this, and she basically derided them, saying, "How can you talk about? We're talking about the planet, the future of the planet, and the survival of the species, and you're talking to me about cost."
Mhm.
Um, so, what do you think, Kyle? Do you think those ends justify those means?
In the case of the climate change,
Yeah,
Green New Deal or whatever.
right.
No, obviously I don't. The old saying or whatever, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Um, to get, I don't know, I haven't done a ton of research or whatever, but um, I mean, I would assume that to get to lesser emissions, there would be some sacrifice that would need to be made, but you have to compare, like, the cost to the outcome. Do the ends justify the means?
Right.
Um,
Well, and the other part too is in this Green New Deal, they are, they're basically asking and expecting the United States to absorb all of this cost to basically alter our lifestyle, destroy our economy, and everything else. And the biggest polluters, China, India, places like that, they're not contemplating doing anything like this.
mm,
So even if we were to bring our carbon emissions down by 95% or whatever from the United States, it's not, it would probably make a little bit of a difference, but it doesn't hold a candle to the carbon emissions from China and India
yeah.
and emerging companies like that. So then the question is, okay, well, if you're really serious about this and this is really the truth, then basically we've got to go to war with China and India and beat them into submission so
Hmm.
that they stop polluting the planet,
Yeah.
or else it's all for naught. So is that part of Green New Deal?
Yeah, I didn't see that mentioned in there, but maybe it was in the frequently asked questions that got deleted.
Yeah, I didn't see that either. And then the question is, if our economy obliterated like that, how do we go and fight that war?
I guess you have to do the one after the other.
Yeah. It's just bizarre, and it's. I really believe that it's just disingenuous that have latched on to something that they think that enough people are ill-informed and
Well, I don't know. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, I guess they're technically ill-informed, or I think most people, this is the old saying. Like they always said, Democrats think that people are, or maybe not Democrats, maybe leftists is the term, think that people are generally good,
yeah,
and left to their own devices, they would naturally do good.
right.
Whereas the right views people as naturally terrible, and left to their own devices, they're going to do terrible things.
To a certain degree, I get what you're saying.
Well, I mean, it's a whatever it's called. It's just a saying, but I don't know. I think most people. I don't know. I mean, I think I'm more middle of the road on a lot of things.
Sure.
Definitely more than you guys, you and Mom.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I think that most people, when you hear about something and you're not explained, would you
Yeah.
like to lower carbon emissions and have the planet be, healthier as far as with pollution? I think most people would say yes.
Yeah. Who would argue against that?
Yeah.
Just frame it in that way.
Yeah.
Certainly.
And I think that's why a lot of people kind of latch on and gravitate to this kind of thing. And it's the same thing with like identity politics or whatever. I mean, I know that's one of the buzzwords or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think most people want, these minorities to do well and to prosper and everything.
Sure.
And
it's the American dream.
It's just the way that, and I mean, it's not like the Democrats want them to prosper. I mean, they want them to vote for them and to be on the government dole. But they're nicer about it.
Right. It's that virtue signaling thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell you in some way that I care, really doesn't matter what I do as long as I can say that I care and I care more than you, and it's that whole virtue signaling thing that the Democrats and the liberals do.
Yeah,
they care more than you do.
Go ahead.
Well, they care more than you do.
Yeah.
However, when you look at the charitable giving between conservatives and liberals, it's not even close. Conservatives give way more of their own money than liberals do. Liberals want to give everybody else's money because they care, but they won't give their own so much.
Well, I mean, just look at Bernie Sanders. I mean, the guy's got 3 houses and he makes plenty of money. He ran for president in 2016 and then wrote a book and made, millions of dollars off of his book. Why did he even sell his book? He's a communist. He wants people to,
Yeah. Or he should have given the money away.
Yeah.
Paid for some climate change goodies. I don't know. Yeah. That's the thing, you see that hypocrisy. It's like this whole big thing with Ocasio-Cortez. When she was running, she had the option. Her office in New York was 300 feet from a subway station.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And she could have taken the Amtrak to DC from New York, and it was much less carbon footprint. But she chose to fly, even though even in her own New Green Deal, flying is one of the horrors of for the
that's
economy.
One of the things that she wants to get rid of.
Right, but
along with the farting cows.
She did it more and more and more, and somebody called her on. There's nothing wrong with living the way the world is today, but if you really believe this stuff and you really want to be a leader, then you got to lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
She just wants everybody else not to be able to fly and everybody else, to reduce their carbon footprints. Al Gore again.
Yeah, well, he would fly all over the place giving his speeches and
Right.
railing against the.
Yeah. And there was a big thing. Give a speech, flew his private jet, got in a big limousine, drove to the event with his driver to the limousine to the event. He went in to speak and told the driver to keep the car running so that the air would stay cool in the car when he got back. And he in there speaking for an hour. Out the car is idling outside so that it doesn't get too warm when he's done. That was a documented thing. People found out about that and called him out on it. So again, come on, if you're going to really tell me that this is real and this is, Al Gore at that time he was somewhere around turn of the century, right? He was
It was Inconvenient Truth, right?
Yeah, was it at 98, 99, maybe
I
something?
think so. I think he said by 2010.
2010 or 2013, the price kept totally going. The sea levels would rise. The coastline would be vastly different than it is of the United States and everywhere else. And I mean, it's all this. They spew this stuff out like it's fact, and people believe them. Ocasio-Cortez say in 12 years they're over. So I guess somewhere around 2030 done. We'll see what happens 2031. We'll see how right she is. But it's always pushed out there in the future, just far enough where there's that plausible.
Well, I mean, that's what any cult leader does. I mean, like,
Right.
I don't want to compare him to Jim Jones or whatever, but it's always,
Yeah.
The world's going to end in 1973, and then 73 comes, and we're like, well, I was.
Yeah,
I was
we were a little
confused.
off on our numbers. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the funny part about the Al Gore thing, like, they had a sequel to The Inconvenient Truth, so. No, really, this time.
Yeah.
And
about this.
like we talked about the last podcast, I'm not one of the people that, a climate change denier or whatever, I mean.
Yeah.
I think that, well, I mean, obviously there's more pollution now than there, ever has been in history, just because we're an industrialized place or industrialized societies. And I'm sure that maybe has some impact on global warming. Just, I don't think we're headed for catastrophic climate change. And I mean, even like Casey talked about last time, I mean, there's plenty of things that besides pollution that change, solar flares and volcanoes and everything else,
so on and so forth,
and just the cyclical nature. I mean,
exactly.
We had a little ice age in like 1600s, I think, and the world's been progressively warming since then.
Right.
And then back in dinosaur times or whatever, they say the temperature was way warmer than it is now.
Right.
So.
And then back in probably you were too young to remember at this time, but back in the 80s, 90s, when this climate taken, a big component of it was the depleting ozone layer.
Mm-hmm.
The ozone layer was being depleted by, not so much carbon. Hairspray was a big one, aerosol cans, different chemicals that factories produced, into the air, in addition to carbon and so forth. And that was, again, this ozone hole was forming over the Antarctica, and, that it was basically going to kill all human beings. And the Chicken Littles were out there basically saying the same thing again. And then they found out that the ozone hole was closing up, because they actually found that ozone is created by the sun. So it's, as long as the sun is still out there, um, ozone will be created. And, so it went from this horrible, terrible crisis that you can't use deodorant, use hairspray, because you're going to kill your grandchildren. And now you don't hear anything about it anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm just, and I think, we've talked about it many times. I'm just really skeptical.
Well, I mean, you have to be skeptical about most things, I believe.
Yeah.
You can't just believe something out of the blue, especially something that will wind up costing $93 trillion.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to do your research, and you have to look at things, and
Yeah.
And another, I guess, ends justifying the means, where we probably don't think that the ends do justify the means. I watched a video this week or last week, I can't remember. But it was a woman giving an interview she had had an abortion.
Uh-huh.
Not right then. I mean, it had been
Right.
years
ago. Right.
prior. And she was talking about it, and she was in college at the time, and the guy had got her pregnant and left, so she was basically going to be on her own. Be a single mom. She would have to stop going to college. She would, get a job, and then, it's really hard to go back to college. I can attest to that. Once you, are out of that age group or whatever, you got things you got to worry about. You got kids, you got a job, you got a bunch of prior commitments. So she was saying that, she didn't like it. I mean, obviously she didn't come out, clicking her heels when she came out of the abortion clinic. Right. But it wound up being a good thing. She was able to go to college and finish her degree and get a good job. Now she's married, blah, blah, blah. And I think she said she was like 6 weeks along when she had the abortion, which is, I mean, nobody knows. You can't ask the baby in utero, can you feel this? The scientific studies have shown that nerve endings and stuff are developing at 20 to 24 weeks. So that's when they believe that they can feel pain. But I mean, like I said, you don't have any idea whether they could feel pain or not.
Well, and that's only one factor in things too. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, she was just saying, it was when all the third trimester and fourth trimester abortion talk was going on.
Okay.
And she, wasn't in favor of that, but she was in favor of, having her abortion. So in that case, would the ends justify the means? And, we talked about, nobody knows how much a human life is worth, but I don't know. I mean,
it is. It's a tough question, and
you never know what could have happened had she had the baby. I mean, there's no.
Well, as much as I understand that thought process, the other side of that coin is, she said, well, things worked out for the best because I got to stay in college, I got married now, I have kids, I'm leading a good life that I wouldn't have had before. But how did things turn out for the baby?
Yeah,
it didn't turn out too well for the baby. And that's the thing. And we can argue this till the cows come home. There's going to be people on both sides. And even in a case like that where she says, okay, things worked out good. It was very early in the pregnancy. I could have been a statistic as far as a single living in poverty, and who knows how this child would have been, But I think if the child had a choice and could make a rational decision, I think the child would have preferred life, no matter what that life was, over death. And there's
Well, I
always,
mean,
even,
then too, like,
go ahead.
if it was me, and I mean, obviously this is a ridiculous hypothetical situation, but
Right.
my family's going to be taken care of for the rest of their lives, and all their needs met and whatever, but this person has to kill me for that to
Yeah, but,
happen.
right.
I would make that. I mean, well, I don't know. I'd think that I would. I'm not. I mean, you never know until you're in that kind of
You never know.
situation. But
Right. But you're making that call.
mm,
It's not, um, it's not your wife or your kids saying,
yeah,
um,
I'm not saying I
Dad,
would never
we think
here kill
we
my
should.
wife or my kids, and we'll be
Well,
happy
no,
forever.
but what I'm saying is you're making sacrifice your life. If it was your wife or your kids saying, "Dad, listen, you eat too much. You don't have enough food. You eat too. We're going to have to kill
They do
you."
say that.
Okay, in order for us to be able to live a comfortable lifestyle, that's two different things.
Mm.
You making the decision versus that. So
Well, you had
that's all.
said you thought the baby would have, if
Yeah.
if he could decide, you thought that he would have chosen life. But I mean, if he had all the options put up for him, maybe he wouldn't have. I mean,
Well,
obviously it's a crazy hypothetical
it
situation.
is. That's yeah. And then the other thing too is no. She thinks the decision worked out, even if she's just looking at it from her point of view.
Mm.
That still is that's never without cost. Women who've had abortion, studies have shown they have a really hard time. In most cases, it's very emotionally devastating
Yeah.
to them in a lot of cases, in a lot of ways. So it's not just a simple, I think I'm going to wear the blue dress today versus the red dress
Mm.
decision.
No,
There are
definitely.
far-reaching consequences, even for the mother later on.
Mm.
There's many women who went in for abortions as young women, and the doctors didn't go good and sloppy, and they turned out they couldn't have children later. So there's always consequences to every decision, and that's just my whole issue with that is that that it's not just you that's affected. You make that decision. There's a case right now. I forget. I think it's Alabama or somewhere where the father did not want
Yeah, I heard about that.
her to have an abortion. They did it anyway. Abortion clinic did it anyway, and he's now suing. I think the abortion clinic, and I think it's the first case of its kind that's actually going to be heard. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I mean, it's a tough debate.
It is.
I mean, I had posted something when all this stuff was with New York was going on
Right,
Facebook,
right, right.
and
You caught some crap from liberal friends.
yeah, well, for me, I was always growing up. I mean, you guys were pretty vehement pro-life, um, and I was more pro-choice. Like, it wouldn't have been something that I would have, if I had gotten a girl pregnant in high school, or whatever, I wouldn't have like pushed her for abortion, or I probably
Right.
would have said I would not want you to have one.
Yeah.
Again, you never know till you're in that situation, um, but I was generally fine with, if that's what something you wanted, and
One's right to
it's your
choose and
body,
all
your
that.
choice, whatever. Um, but then, I had kids of my own, and I mean, they were born a month early. They're twins, um, and just holding the kids
Sure.
and having them, and it kind of changes something. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and I get that, when the baby is 6 weeks into gestation or whatever, it doesn't look like my kids look like when they came out. I get it. It looks
Right.
like an alien. It's got a big head
Yeah.
and
Right.
weird looking little thing.
Your kids were a little kind of weird looking.
Yeah, they had big heads. But I don't know. And then watching some of the videos. I mean, it wasn't like an actual video. It was kind of a illustrated thing of how they do second and third trimester abortions and stuff, where they just reach in there and just rip them apart, basically, because they're too big to, at that point the head has gotten too big, unless you're dilated, to get it out. So they basically just rip arms and legs off and crush the skull, and it's disturbing,
horrible.
And that's why I'm super against late term abortions.
Yeah.
And
now they're even gone further, infanticide and the simple bill that they tried to get through that said if an abortion didn't succeed and the baby was somehow born alive, that you have to render medical care to that baby. And 44 senators voted against that bill. Just a simple common sense bill.
Yeah.
44 of them said that no, if it was a botched abortion, the baby was born, you leave the baby there till the exposure kills it or whatever. How barbaric is that?
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And the excuse they used was there's already a bill on the books. But then a week before or a week after they did the hate crime, lynching would be classified as a federal hate crime.
Yeah.
Even though it's already considered a state hate crime, and obviously it would, be a crime federally. So that was already kind of enshrined, but they just re-enshrined it.
Yeah.
And that got obviously bipartisan support, because who wouldn't support that bill? I'm not saying that you shouldn't support that bill, but to do that and then to use the excuse of, well, we have a law that's similar,
Right, but the state laws are getting changed left and right in New York and Virginia and Nevada, places like that, where they're talking about, was it Governor Northam in Virginia says, well, if the baby's born, then the mother and the doctor will have a discussion on whether or not the baby alive or not. I mean, that's why you need a federal bill to protect that situation, because states are crazy in a lot of cases. What's this thing in Wisconsin? I just heard that or said start issuing driver's licenses to illegal aliens because that will make our roads safer. I mean, there's crazy people running these states. So,
I mean, I guess if they have to go through and take the driving test part, maybe it would make the.
Okay.
Especially those Chinese immigrants. Oh.
Well, that's the thing. If they can't read English, how are they going to read the road signs? The one that says.
Well, that's why the road signs are designed with specific shapes for people who can't read.
It still makes it a little tougher, and we're just going to add more people that can't understand English. Anyway, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah. And I think that's probably also, I mean, I guess you could probably include anything in, the ends justifying the means.
Right.
But the border dispute,
right,
from both sides, really, is the wall that they wanted to build, $5.7 billion. I get that that's a microscopic, portion of our yearly budget. I get that. I understand that, we use more than that in toilet paper for the White House or whatever.
Right.
But is the wall going to be worth it, as far financially, so you can look at it from that side.
Is this a rhetorical question, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can talk about it if you want, but I mean, you can kind of look at it from that side. Is the ends justifying the means there? 5.7 billion. Are you stopping enough people? Are you doing enough good with that amount of money?
Well,
And
I
then
think when we had 79,000 illegal immigrants cross into our country last month, 1 month, 79,000 got into our country 1 month.
Hmm.
Whether the wall would have stopped all 79, probably not, but that number would have been less right now.
Yeah,
That number would have,
possibly.
I would say you can't really even argue that it would by some factor, whatever you could argue what that factor is,
Yeah, yeah.
but it
But
would be
again,
less.
I mean, if the factor is, all right, we stopped 5 additional people this month, that's $1 billion ahead.
Right.
Would that be
But
worth it as far as financially?
how much money spent by the federal government over the next 20 years for those 79,000 people? You extrapolate the cost of those people in our society. On average, everybody's different. Some people are more self-sustaining than others in terms of what the cost is. But they have children. You've got the schooling, the health care, on and on and on and on and on. The social services, which vast majority of them are on. So what's the cost over 20 years for that 79,000 people? It's that $5 billion times 100 times I don't know what it is. It's huge just for that group of people. So, this is a discussion probably for another podcast. There's
Yeah. Well, like I'm
there's
saying, I mean, in your opinion, those ends would justify the means there.
Yeah.
You're spending, and like I said, I mean, I get that it's a small percentage of the federal
right.
budget.
$1 billion is a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I'm so saying. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a lot of money. That's more money
It
than
is.
the entire herd family has seen, and the
Ever.
the existence of the herd
Yeah,
family.
added together.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
But the we can make 1,000. If you can't control your borders, are you really a country? There's so many. The liberals all talk about that Trump made this is a manufactured crisis. There's no problem at the border. Well, 79,000 people crossed in 1 month. That's more than it has been. I don't know how far back it goes, and we've got more caravans headed this way.
Well, I mean, as far as yearly numbers, I mean, it's down from like the 90s.
Well, I don't know now. That's 1 month.
I'm sure it is. I'm almost positive it is.
We'll have to look at that. What the numbers are.
But I mean, it just goes back to what I was saying. Is it the ends justifying the means in that case?
Right.
And
that's it's going to depend on where you stand on, and it's also going to depend on what your ends are. I firmly believe that the liberals, the Democrats, the progressives, whatever you want to call them, want open borders for specifically the purpose to increase their voter base and keep them in power.
well, yeah, I mean, you have a reason to do anything. I mean, if
they can say
Latin Americans were coming through and voting for Republicans, it would probably be the other way around.
Well, think about this. Most of the Cubans that came over, they let them over initially. There was the Mario boat lift and all that sort of stuff. We let a bunch of Cuban people in, and the Democrats pretty much put a stop to it when they realized most of the Cubans were voting Republican, because most of the Cubans saw what socialism did to their country, from Batista to Castro. And in this right now, you don't have Democrats jumping up and down trying to get Venezuelans to come here. Same reason. If Venezuelan citizens came here, chances are a majority of them would be the Republicans, because they saw how their country was devastated by socialism. So You can't tell me it's a humanitarian thing for them. It's just it suits their quest for power. It's an end to their means, and basically the country be damned.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
No, I mean, and I think I agree with you. I mean, I haven't done all of the research that I need to do on it.
Sure.
But
And that's one thing I will say. You don't take what anybody says. You'll listen to both sides usually of something, and you'll sit and you'll do your research. You were a kid. You research, and you draw your own conclusions. That's to be commended.
well, I mean, that's what I try to do. I mean, I think I'm more. Obviously, I'm right leaning, but I think I'm more libertarian probably than.
Yeah.
You know.
There's nothing wrong.
But what I was saying, on the other hand, as far as ends justifying the means, I had watched a video. I sent it to you. I don't know if you ever watched it. But I was interviewed with a guy from some place that does research.
The students with the Green New Deal.
No.
Okay.
It was an interview with Andrew Clavin.
Okay.
But they had a guy. I forget what place he was from, what organization or whatever.
Right.
But he was saying that the majority, or I guess illegal immigrants, are kind of a breaking even as far as money that they're costing the government or whatever. Either breaking even or a little bit of a net positive. And again, I haven't done my own research on that, but
Right.
Obviously they do stimulate the economy. I mean, yes, they sometimes use. I mean, not sometimes. Usually they use like the ER, because the ER basically can't turn you away for anything,
Right.
and they have to treat you. So, if you're an illegal immigrant and you don't have any insurance or whatever, you're just gonna,
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. I mean, if I had a sick kid and I had no
Sure.
way to, I would take them to the emergency room. And if I'm an illegal immigrant and I have a family and somebody's offering to give me food stamps, I would probably take them.
Sure.
But they do also bring in, with the economy, they're spending money here that they wouldn't spend. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that, that could be an American getting that job and spending that money.
Well, no, I mean there definitely is. You got more people consuming, but you've also got a pretty large cost borne by the federal government and borne by the taxes,
Mm-hmm.
and in a majority.
Yeah, because obviously, if you're an illegal immigrant, you're not paying income tax.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of numbers. Some of them are true. Some of them are skewed one way. Some of them are skewed the other way. So it's hard to really get a handle on.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, no matter whether it's a net positive or a net negative cost wise, you can't just let anybody walk into your country.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do it at your home. You don't do it at your place of business. If somebody comes into your business and for whatever reason you feel threatened, you can ask them to leave. And if they don't, you can call the police, and the police will escort them out.
Yeah.
So why do we think that's okay? People that we don't know anything about them, we don't know what their intentions are, and true, 90% might just be coming for a better life. And I totally get that. But you still have to have a process. You still have to have, it's like they say, the wall isn't about keeping people out. It's about making them use the door.
Yeah.
Just use the door. That's all we're asking.
Yeah.
Don't just flood across the border. You can't do that. You show me one other country that allows it.
Yeah, I
Doesn't
mean,
have.
there's definitely not many.
No.
I guess if you're willing to join ISIS, you could probably go to Syria.
Well, even
Topical.
you try. Yeah, I know. You try sneaking across the border into Mexico. If you get caught, see what happens to you. You know.
Well, there was
So,
that person that got in trouble in Canada. Like they just kind of
yeah,
stumbled across the border into Canada.
right. They didn't really even realize it. Right?
Yeah, and then they got arrested by the Mounties and were held, for
Yeah.
a couple weeks or a month or whatever.
You can't play that. I mean, are you really a country if you have no?
Yeah. I think the reason why people are for it is just the idea of like fairness or whatever. Like obviously we all Americans are the luckiest people that Americans living right now. You're the
Yeah,
luckiest people that have ever lived in the entire history of the world.
right. On a general basis, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because even like people that are destitute now have better lives than they had
Yeah,
100 years ago.
in most places. Yeah.
I mean, in the United States is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm saying even compared to other countries.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
That's
we're super lucky.
right.
I mean, and it's just luck of the draw or whatever.
Yeah,
Our ancestors lived in a certain place and moved here. However many years ago.
legally.
Yeah, but we just luck of the draw, whatever. So I think
Right.
that the reason why they want these people, I mean, obviously, there could be ulterior motives, like we talked about with the Democrats being for it, to get votes or whatever. But as far as the general population, this goes back to I think people are mostly good or whatever.
Well, I think
I
that's
think
true.
they want, they're like, it's not fair that I was born here and I, am afforded all of these rights. And then you got
Yeah,
somebody, like, I mean, you could be born in El Paso, Texas, and then a guy could be born 2 miles away from you in
right,
Mexico. And,
right.
you know, so,
I get that. I get that. I get that 100%. And you can feel bad about it, and and everything else. And I understand, but that still does not make it right.
mm,
You know, and it's like it goes back to the same thing. It's if you see a homeless person on the street who is not as fortunate as you, that has less than you, and you decide you want to give them some money, right? You're
mm,
free to do that. You can do that. You can help that person. You could get that person a hotel room for the night so they can shower, bed. You could give them a job if you own a company. You could do all sorts of things that you might want to do to help that person out. But there's a big difference between that and the government telling you, hey, this homeless person over here has less. We're going to take half of your stuff, give it to that homeless person.
yeah.
So there's a huge difference in that.
Mm.
And that's basically what the left is saying
Well, I mean,
is,
that's
how
what they're doing
dare
with the
you?
socialism or whatever.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even in terms of the border, how dare you say we should somehow limit illegal immigration because you have so much, or you must be a racist. It's the only possible answer is
Mm,
that you must be a racist, or else you these people in and help them every way you could.
mm.
Of course, it's not Nancy Pelosi that's writing a check to help these folks out. It's coming out of everybody's tax dollars. Um, Again, they're very generous with other people's money.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
but
but going back to your example, I mean, yeah, you could give that Mexican guy some money and get him a hotel room, but you can't give him a job. I mean, I guess you can,
so
if you
yeah,
want to,
yeah.
but
Well, I
legally
was
you're not
talking about
supposed to give him a
a
job.
I was using the example as a homeless person, but I wasn't really even referring to him as an immigrant.
Mm.
You're right.
But
I mean,
I
you're
mean,
not supposed to.
for me, my take on it, and I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect solution.
Right.
But obviously, things need to change. I mean, I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever side of the fence you line up on.
Sure.
But to me, like what I would like to see happen is obviously, like you said, I mean, you need to know who's coming in. You need to know if they're a criminal, if they're convicted of some sort of crime. And if you're over here and you get convicted of a crime, then you're gone. Sorry,
Right.
you had your chance.
Yep. Yep.
But
And we're not talking about a speeding ticket either. We're talking about
no,
a felon.
yeah, obviously, yeah, felony level crime.
Right.
But so they could come over here, they could get jobs, they could. I mean, like we talked about, I mean, maybe they do, are a net positive as far as economical goes. Who know? I don't know. I haven't done the research.
Yeah.
That's what one guy said. But if you take away the social welfare programs, I think that's what needs to be done. Where they
Well, I
could
think
come across and sign the guest book or whatever. This is my name. I don't know if they have social security numbers in Mexico. I'm sure they have some sort of registration number. Most countries do. So we could do a background check on you, and you come over
Yeah,
here
but
and you
why
can
not?
get a job.
If we're going to do that, why not just go back to the immigration process that has worked for centuries?
Well, I've done a little bit of research on that. That was in one of our other podcasts we talked about, where there's all the talk of people don't want to go the legal route because it takes so long.
Oh, sorry.
It's bureaucracy. There was
Yeah.
one guy, I think he was from Australia, and he was trying to move to the United States, and he said it wound up taking like 4 years and tens of thousands of dollars to do it.
Well, I get that, but you still can't.
No, I agree with you. I think the rule of law, a country needs to have its rule of law, and like I said, they need to come in and sign the guest book. You can't just sneak over the border or whatever.
Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding you. By that, you mean they need to do it the right way. Then I'm with you. But
yeah, but I think the right way needs to be changed. I mean,
well,
I don't think that
there are some changes, yeah, that can be made. But
like speed up the process.
I think you've got to. The only way you're ever going to, even if you go to something, the way you're ever going to get there is if you stop all access, so that they have to give you their name or whatever. You have to stop this unfettered access across the border, which is where the wall comes in. Jerusalem is surrounded by people who want to kill them, and a wall keeps those people away by and large.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But I mean, when you say that to most people, that makes that that's where the "you're a racist" comes in. Like, these Mexicans are coming to kill us. So we're like Jerusalem with the Palestine.
Yeah, but that's disingenuous, because the reason
No, I
I'm
agree,
saying,
but it comes across that way when you say that.
well, what I mean by that is not that I'm equating the Mexican people with the Palestinians in the fact that Palestinians want to kill Jews.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is there's a much more whatever. Well, there's a huge motive in that hate to get in there and kill Jews, where even with that huge motive, the wall is stopping. So if you get somebody who just says and they can't get in, they're not going to have the same degree of that needing to cross the border to be able to kill somebody, I guess is what I'm saying there.
Yeah,
The
but I
point I'm
think that
making
if
is
you,
that walls. The point I'm making is that walls. That's the whole point of that statement,
Mhm.
because many people, say, well, walls don't work anyway, and
well,
this.
no, I agree. Obviously, I mean,
Blah, blah, blah.
there's been plenty of wall, Hadrian's Wall and
The
by the
Great Wall of
Romans,
China.
Great Wall of China. Yeah,
Yeah.
walls
So,
in your
but,
house, they
but
work, but
but to get your plan to work, you have to close the. You have to have control of that
I
plan.
don't think that's necessarily true. And let me tell you why. All right,
Okay.
so if right now we'll say it takes, I mean, I'm just picking a number out of the air. We'll say it takes 2 years
Okay.
to get through the the process of becoming a citizen or whatever. You're not even a citizen, but like getting a green card essentially. Um, so we'll say it takes 2 years. If you
All right.
were to lower that to 2 weeks, it's a dangerous journey that these people take to
Right.
come across. Like they say that like drug cartels and coyotes pretty much own the area between the border and 100 miles in to
Right.
Mexico. So you have to pay them or risk sneaking across their territory first and then sneaking across the United States territory. So it's a very dangerous proposition for that to
Sure.
happen. Um, and you know there are borders set up like in El Paso. There's a bridge that goes right across, and you can drive across and show your ID and yada 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 and get through. Um, and obviously there's a road leading from some city in Mexico to that bridge. Um, so if they made the process shorter, I think you would have more people willing to go through those ports of entry rather
Maybe.
than try to go across.
Maybe so. But let me ask you this: what if you were one of those people who was an MS-13 gang member, whatever reason, did not have the proper credentials to be able to get across?
Mm-hmm.
Did not have that was an undesirable person in some way, shape, or form that we would say no.
Mm.
The border is not closed, then there's no. Why would they even try and go through that if they didn't think they were going to do that? They just come across the border any way they could.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I've often been an advocate of, okay, we've got all these people between 12 and 30 million undocumented illegal immigrants in our country today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, huge number. Obviously, even though Trump said, "Oh, we got to round the right way," that's not a practical thing that's ever going to happen. So, my opinion is we close the border so no more come in except through the right channels, and we take those people, which a lot of the Latino community that are advocates for illegal immigration, their big thing is, well, let these people come into the light, let them become productive members of society, they can pay taxes, do all these things. Okay, that's fine. Then we'll take the people that are here. We're not giving you citizenship, but we will not deport you. Okay, you can come forward. We'll give you credentials to work if you're working. You will pay taxes because you're here in this country.
Yeah, you're using the services that taxes pay for,
Exactly,
the
the
roads,
roads, everything else. So,
police service, yada yada yada.
and we will not deport you. Okay, we're basically giving you a do over on the fact that you broke our laws to come in. Okay, so you can now work. However, just like you said, if you commit a felony level crime, you have lost you've lost it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not a citizen. You're here by our good graces to stay. You've got the opportunity to be a productive member of society and live a good life. But if you commit a felony level crime, you're gone.
Yeah.
We're not going to tolerate that. I think, I still don't think at that point, unless you do something that's pretty stout as far as making do some kind of a fine, or I don't know how, but it's not an automatic path to citizenship. because that's not right either. We've had people that have come in the right way and been denied.
Mm. Well, I mean, that's usually how it is. Like, if the country feels that you're going to be a drain on the country, then you're not allowed in. If they feel like you're going to be on
That's the way it used to
social work.
be.
Well, I mean, it isn't still now as far as legal immigration goes. If
even
you
people
guys
that
wanted to move to Australia when I was, a baby or whatever, if you would have done that, and I tried to come here and I was an unskilled laborer or whatever, I still wouldn't be allowed. I mean, I don't know how it works since you guys were citizens, and so I think I would still be technically a citizen. So that's a bad example, but you get the point.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where.
But merit-based immigration was done away. It used to be that way. You used to have to prove what you were bringing to the table for us to allow you in, but that's not the case anymore.
Oh, is it not?
No.
Oh.
Done away with that because it's just horrible. It's just how you're going to ask this person, and all people have value. All people, I mean, it's that typical liberal argument.
Well, I mean, I think that, and again, I mean, you could go back and say, these jobs could go to Americans and yada yada yada. You can go on all day, but
if you have to come in legally, you have a much more. There's a much better chance you assimilate in.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Because
you have to take the citizenship tests in English, and they probably give it in Spanish.
You want to be here for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
We're only going to let you in if you're going to be here for reasons. Because how many, we have just so many examples of people that hate this country, but they're here so they can buck and they can send that money back to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And they just absolutely despise Americans and America, but they're still on the ground.
I don't think that they necessarily despise Americans and America.
Not all of them, but I know that there's been several.
Well, I'm sure there's some, but I mean, even if they're coming across, I mean, because you had a guy, I mean, he came across with a green card and stuff, but Lupe, the guy that you had,
yeah,
and he sent majority of his money back to Belize.
Yeah, he was just here temporarily.
Yeah,
come in.
So and I mean, he stayed with us. It didn't seem like he hated,
No,
Americans. I don't think he hated America or Americans.
No.
I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think that, by sending money back to your country.
No, I'm not saying that's a telltale sign of that necessarily, but I'm saying that there is a percentage that is that do not to be quote unquote Americans. They just want to.
Well, there's plenty of Americans that want to be Americans that hate America.
Most of them have a D after their name.
Unless they're in a photo of the KKK member and somebody in blackface, and they put an R there.
Right. I don't know how we got here from the ends justify the means.
Well, we've wound our way around here.
Yeah.
But I mean, and again, I mean, I'm just a guy. I'm not a expert on this by any means. My idea would be, and I don't know, there's still some things that I'm unsure about. But if companies were, and this is the part that I'm kind of like wary of, because this would require the government to kind of grow bigger, which I'm not a fan of. I prefer smaller government. But if the government were to, they have that thing now that I forget what it's called, but like to get a job in some places, it's you have to be a citizen, or have a green card or whatever.
Oh, the E-Verify.
E-Verify, yeah. So if they tighten restrictions on that, where you had to E-Verify for whatever job you had,
right.
And then you kind of speed up the process of moving them in. You come in, you're allowed to come in here and work.
You take away the social.
obviously. Well, then again, I mean, if they're paying taxes, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's for citizens, and we've paid into that. So,
Well, the point of it
I
is,
mean, I don't think that they should. If they're not going to get Social Security, I don't think they should have to pay into Social Security. The immigrants or whatever. If you're just coming here to be a migrant worker or whatever, and you're paying taxes, I don't think that Social Security and Medicaid should be included if you're not going to get those services.
I think you can make the argument both ways, but that's fine.
I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's chinks in any kind of, but if you do that and you speed up the process a little bit and they get
You just use a
green
racial
cards.
slur against Asian Americans.
No, a chink in the armor is what I said.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I don't want to get.
I made a racial stereotype earlier when I said that they couldn't drive.
We're gonna get
I
ourselves.
love Asians. I just. But
Gotta have a sense of humor, folks. That's right. Anyway.
But I mean, but that's just my my idea for what I would see done. But.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've beat this horse for a good bit here tonight.
Yeah, we're an hour and a half almost.
Well, see there. All right. Well, it was a good conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
it was entertaining. Hopefully, you all find it entertaining and don't find it boring and monotonous.
We either want you to like it or trigger.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, please, post a comment or whatever, and we'll respond to you. I'm gonna set up an email address for us so you could, send in an email, a question or whatever, or comment, or just tell us we're dumb and we have stupid voices. Whatever you want to do.
Right. We'd encourage that.
Yeah.
Not the dumb and stupid voices part. Glad to hear.
Well, just we'd like to know that you listened. So
that's right.
I wouldn't mind the dumb and stupid voices.
Okay.
Anyways. All right. Well, do you want to play us out, Tom?
Well, I don't know what I'm going to tap on the table. But, we have enjoyed the conversation. We hope that you did as well. And this is Tom Hurt and Kyle Hurt. Change Your World. And we'll hope you come back and visit us again real soon. Thanks.